NEC Section 334.15c addresses horizontal wiring on surfaces. This section states that surface-mounted wiring shall be mechanically secured to the surface it is mounted on. The interpretation of this code section is critical to understanding the requirements for Romex cable installations. According to the NEC, this section does not mandate that horizontal Romex cables must be run vertically along studs or across to boxes. The primary requirement is that the cables are mechanically secured to the surface they are mounted on. In a typical installation where Romex cables are attached to tubes for studs, this provides adequate mechanical support and generally meets the requirements of the code. However, it's crucial to be aware that local codes or ordinances may exist that impose additional requirements on how horizontal cables must be run. These local requirements would only be applicable if they have been specifically adopted by the local authority having jurisdiction or AHA. To ensure compliance, it is essential to contact the local AHA and verify the specific requirements for horizontal cable installations in detached garages within that jurisdiction. Understanding the nuances of NEC Section 334.15c can prevent misinterpretations and ensure that electrical installations are both safe and compliant. This involves understanding the proper methods of securing Romex cables to various surfaces. The NEC provides guidelines for securing cables to studs, joists, and other structural members. These guidelines ensure that the cables are protected from physical damage and are properly supported. When running Romex cables horizontally, it is important to use appropriate cable staples or straps to secure the cable to the studs. The staples or straps should be spaced according to the NEC guidelines to provide adequate support. The distance between supports should not exceed 4½ feet for horizontal runs and 12 inches for vertical runs, unless the cable is run through bored holes in framing members. In addition to proper support, it is also important to protect Romex cables from physical damage. This can be achieved by running the cables through conduit or by installing nail plates over the cables where they pass through framing members. Nail plates are particularly important in areas where there is a risk of nails or screws penetrating the cable. Furthermore, it is important to avoid running Romex cables in areas where they are exposed to moisture or corrosive substances. If cables must be run in these areas, they should be protected by using appropriate conduit or cable jackets. When making connections to boxes, it is important to use approved cable connectors to secure the cable to the box. These connectors should be properly tightened to ensure a secure connection. It is also important to leave sufficient slack in the cable to allow for future maintenance or repairs. When installing Romex cables in detached garages, it is important to consider the specific requirements of the garage. For example, if the garage is used for storage, it may be necessary to protect the cables from physical damage by running them through conduit. Additionally, if the garage is located in a damp or wet area, it may be necessary to use moisture-resistant cable or conduit. It is also crucial to ensure that all electrical work is performed by a qualified electrician who is familiar with the NEC and local codes. This will help to ensure that the installation is safe and compliant. In addition to NEC Section 334.15c, other sections of the NEC may also be relevant to horizontal Romex cable installations. For example, NEC Section 300.4 addresses the protection of cables and raceways from physical damage. This section requires that cables and raceways be protected from nails, screws, and other objects that could penetrate the cable. Another important section is NEC Section 310.15, which addresses the ampacity of conductors. This section specifies the maximum current that a conductor can carry without overheating. It is important to select conductors that are properly sized for the load they will be carrying to prevent overheating and potential fire hazards. Furthermore, NEC Section 406.4 addresses the installation of receptacles. This section specifies the requirements for grounding receptacles and for protecting them from physical damage. It is important to install receptacles in accordance with the NEC to ensure that they are safe and reliable. In summary, understanding the NEC requirements for horizontal Romex cable installations is essential for ensuring the safety and compliance of electrical systems. By following the guidelines in the NEC and consulting with the local AHJ, it is possible to install Romex cables in a manner that is both safe and effective. Remember to always prioritize safety and consult with a qualified electrician if you have any questions or concerns. This ensures that all electrical work is performed to the highest standards, minimizing the risk of electrical hazards. The proper interpretation and application of the National Electrical Code, or NEC, is crucial for ensuring safe and compliant electrical installations. When dealing with Romex, or non-metallic sheathed cable, in locations such as detached garages, several key sections of the NEC come into play. One frequently referenced section is NEC Section 334.15, which covers the exposed work requirements for non-metallic sheathed cable. Specifically, Section 334.15c addresses horizontal wiring on surfaces, as mentioned previously. It's important to understand that the NEC is a set of minimum standards, and local jurisdictions may have amendments or additional requirements that must be followed. These local requirements can vary significantly, so it's always necessary to consult with the local AHJ to determine the specific rules in effect. When running Romex horizontally across open studs, the primary concern is physical protection. The NEC requires that cables be protected from physical damage, and the method of protection can vary depending on the location and the type of construction. In some cases, running the cable through bored holes in the studs may be sufficient. The NEC specifies the size and location of these bored holes to ensure that the structural integrity of the studs is not compromised. Alternatively, the cable can be run on the surface of the studs, but it must be adequately secured and protected. This typically involves using cable staples or straps to support the cable and prevent it from sagging or being easily damaged. The spacing of these supports is also specified in the NEC. In addition to physical protection, it's also important to consider the ampacity of the cable. The ampacity is the maximum current that the cable can safely carry without overheating. The NEC provides tables that specify the ampacity of different sizes and types of cable based on factors such as the insulation temperature rating and the ambient temperature. It's crucial to select a cable with an ampacity that is sufficient for the load it will be carrying and to ensure that the cable is properly protected from overcurrent by a circuit breaker or fuse. Another important consideration is the proper grounding of electrical systems. The NEC requires that all electrical equipment be properly grounded to provide a safe path for fault current to flow back to the source. This helps to prevent electrical shock and fire hazards. Grounding can be achieved by connecting the equipment to a grounding electrode system, such as a ground rod or a metal water pipe. It's also important to ensure that all grounding connections are properly made and are mechanically secure. When working with electrical systems, it's always important to follow safe work practices. This includes wearing appropriate personal protective equipment such as gloves and safety glasses, and energizing the circuit before working on it. It's also important to use properly insulated tools and to avoid working in wet or damp conditions. If you are not familiar with electrical work, it's best to hire a qualified electrician to perform the work. Electrical work can be dangerous, and it's important to ensure that it is done safely and correctly. The NEC is a complex document, and it can be difficult to understand all of the requirements. If you have any questions about the NEC, it's best to consult with a qualified electrical inspector or engineer. They can provide guidance on the specific requirements that apply to your situation and help you to ensure that your electrical installation is safe and compliant. In addition to the NEC, there may be other codes and regulations that apply to electrical installations. These codes and regulations can vary depending on the location and the type of construction. It's important to be aware of all of the applicable codes and regulations and to ensure that your electrical installation complies with them. Some common examples of other codes and regulations include the International Building Code, or IBC, the International Residential Code, or IRC, and the National Fire Protection Association, or NFPA, standards. These codes and standards cover a wide range of topics related to building construction and fire safety, including electrical systems. It's important to consult with the local AHJ to determine which codes and regulations apply to your project. In conclusion, understanding and applying the NEC correctly is essential for ensuring safe and compliant electrical installations. This includes considering factors such as physical protection, opacity, grounding, and safe work practices. It's also important to be aware of any local amendments or additional requirements that may be in effect. By following these guidelines and consulting with qualified professionals, you can help to ensure that your electrical system is safe and reliable. The NEC, as well as local amendments and interpretations, are subject to change. Always refer to the latest edition of the NEC and consult with the local AHJ for the most up-to-date requirements. Proper planning and execution of electrical work can prevent costly mistakes and ensure the safety of occupants. Remember that electrical safety is not just a matter of code compliance, but also a matter of protecting people and property from harm. Regular inspections and maintenance of electrical systems are also important to ensure that they continue to operate safely and efficiently. This includes checking for loose connections, damaged wiring, and other potential problems. By taking these steps, you can help to prevent electrical hazards and extend the lifespan of your electrical system. When installing Romex cables, it's important to avoid sharp bends or kinks, as these can damage the insulation and reduce the ampacity of the cable. The NEC specifies the minimum bending radius for different sizes and types of cable. It's also important to avoid pulling the cable too tightly, as this can also damage the insulation. When pulling cable through conduit, it's important to use a cable lubricant to reduce friction and prevent damage to the cable. The NEC also provides guidelines for the number of conductors that can be installed in a conduit of a given size. It's important to follow these guidelines to prevent overheating and ensure that the conductors are properly ventilated. When making connections to electrical equipment, it's important to use approved connectors and fittings. These connectors and fittings are designed to provide a secure and reliable connection that will not loosen over time. It's also important to tighten all connections properly to ensure that they are making good electrical contact. Loose connections can cause overheating and arcing, which can lead to fires. When installing electrical boxes, it's important to choose the correct size and type of box for the application. The NEC specifies the minimum size of boxes based on the number and size of conductors that will be installed in the box. It's also important to choose a box that is suitable for the environment in which it will be installed. For example, if the box will be exposed to moisture, it should be a weatherproof box. When installing lighting fixtures, it's important to follow the manufacturer's instructions. This includes using the correct type of lamp and wiring the fixture properly. It's also important to ensure that the fixture is properly grounded. Improperly installed lighting fixtures can be a fire hazard. When installing appliances, it's important to follow the manufacturer's instructions. This includes using the correct type of power cord and wiring the appliance properly. It's also important to ensure that the appliance is properly grounded. Improperly installed appliances can be a shock hazard. In addition to the NEC, there may be other standards and guidelines that apply to electrical installations. These standards and guidelines can be developed by organizations such as the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, or IEE, and the American National Standards Institute, or ANSI. It's important to be aware of these standards and guidelines and to follow them when applicable. In conclusion, electrical work is a complex and potentially dangerous task. It's important to have a thorough understanding of the NEC as well as any other applicable codes, standards, and guidelines. It's also important to follow safe work practices and to use the correct tools and equipment. If you are not comfortable performing electrical work yourself, it's best to hire a qualified electrician to do the job.